talk to me about what you see, what you think the problem is right now with young men feeling alienated in the United States.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to something leftists tend to be more comfortable talking about, which is toxic masculinity. You know, male loneliness is.
Oh no!
God, I mean, I shouldn't cuss as much, but I did. Kid is the thing that comes to mind here. Look, this guy's a.
If you're trying not to cuss, okay.
Look, if you're taking advice from this person,
yeah,
you might be an idiot. You might be stupid.
Well, he's going to say something, but this really shows why this is such a very dumb way of thinking.
Often emergent of toxic masculinity. I think a lot of it comes down to something leftists tend to be more comfortable talking about, which is toxic masculinity. You know, male loneliness is often emergent property of toxic masculinity, which is, by the way, nobody likes this term, right? The right gets really upset when you say toxic masculinity because it sounds like you're upset with masculinity in general, and it's a really vague term. So let's just say, I think a lot of guys can be kind of antisocial because they're taught that sort of independence is a masculine virtue. They're taught that, you know, there's value in keeping your feelings bottled up. Now, obviously, it's pretty harmful. It makes people feel kind of lonely.
Okay. So here's the problem with this. Anna is talking to him specifically about how there's some new development. How there's some new development with men feeling, you know, more sad and lonely recently. Okay. And so Vaush's big revelation here is, oh, well, you know, it must be because of toxic masculinity. It must be because men are taught to bottle up their feelings inside. Men are taught to be stoic. Okay. I'm sorry.
For a great reason.
But wait a minute. I'm sorry. Would not the leftist prescription in Vaush's worldview say that men were taught to do all those things far greater for the entirety of human existence, and that now is a weird time that we live in where men are now being taught to not do that? So how the fuck? So if we've lived in periods of time where men were taught to bottle up their feelings more, were taught to be stoic emotionally more through all of human history, and yet now we live in a time where it's the opposite. How is that the problem that's making men feel sad now? How does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, you're right. So you're basically saying that men have always been taught to, and like the framing of this, I just completely reject out of hand. You should be able to control your emotions. Okay.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
So we're talking about teaching men to control their emotions, not bottling them up. I mean, just puts a negative spin on it. Obviously, being able to control your emotions is a positive thing. But men have always been taught to control their emotions, I would argue for a very good reason. And it didn't seem to make them sad in the past. But now, all of a sudden, when you've got, you know, half of the political spectrum coming out and saying, no, you don't have to control your emotions. You want to have a tantrum? Have at it. You know, you're entitled to have your tantrum. Now they're suddenly upset about that. Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
No. Oh, I sent you a DM, but
it seems kind of crazy. Well, this is, and you know, kind of the you know, gender is a social construct. The gender, breaking down the gender binaries, forgetting that men and women are, you know, different. Biological men and women are different is part of the problem here, because the reason why society has always put a premium on men controlling their emotions and also women controlling their emotions, but, you know, not as much, because if women can't control their emotions, it doesn't often lead to physical violence. So, you know, we're focused on everyone controlling their emotions, but we really need to go, you know, the extra mile on men because when men can't control their emotions, it often does lead to physical violence. And people generally don't like a society that has a high amount of physical violence, just, indiscriminately floating around. Do you understand this, Sitch, right?
Sure, of course.
Yeah. So
Well,
there's a technical aspect to this.
And there's another level to
which,
it too.
Obviously guys who are not dangerous in any way, shape, or form don't seem to understand this.
Right.
It's easy for Vaush to say this because, well, I don't know. Vaush is packing these days and telling his audience to pack. So
Right.
weapons are the great equalizer.
Right. But there's another element to it too that's kind of complicated to work out, which is that on one hand, I agree, or I seem to agree, at least my intuition would lead me to say, okay, it's good for people to express the emotion they're feeling. You don't want to just bottle up inside. If you over-excess about your feelings, if you focus too much on your inner feelings, that's going to make you unhappy because you're focusing on it so much. That's why one of the greatest ways to not feel depressed or sad is to be busy, is to find something to do, to be out there in the world doing a job, interacting with people, exercising, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like you can fixate too much on and self-reflect too much, and it's going to make you sad. And I feel like that's kind of the state that a lot of people are in. They're too much in the I need to analyze every single thing I'm feeling at all times.
Look at this. So Sitch gives you the perfect example of why, stoicism is not a bad thing from the individual perspective. And I give you an example of why stoicism is not the worst thing ever from a societal perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yes, yeah, there are lots of reasons why this is a good perspective. It bugs me when you have, far leftists like Vaush and Ana Kasprian, they come out and they give absolutely no context here. Like, what do you mean by toxic masculinity? What do you mean by how is controlling your emotions bad for people? Where's your peer-reviewed study on that?
Or even if it's bad, that's what's responsible for, the way men feel right now, the disenfranchised men people feel right now. But part of it's like, I don't even know if Vaush is saying this because he believes it, or if he's just saying it because he's like, well, I have to give an answer that leftists will like. This is the only way to get, like, maybe in his mind, he's like, the only way that leftists will care about men's issue is if I frame it in something that's palatable to them, like toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Which is sad, but.
Well, I do think, so a lot of people on the left do look at toxic masculinity as, they're obviously competing with other men in the mating market. And when those other men are killing it and they're not killing it, they often see that toxic masculinity is a good excuse for why they're not doing so well.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So that's why they're hooked to the toxic masculinity thing. This is why I was like, what are we talking about with toxic masculinity here? What is toxic masculinity? I would argue, lying and deceiving women to, have sex with them is toxic masculinity. Lying, using women so that you can get rich and they're left high and dry I would say is a good example of toxic masculinity. I haven't seen any toxic masculinity out of Jordan Peterson. Do you have a good example?
No. Not. I don't know. Recently, he's been too angry on Twitter. I don't know if you want to call that toxic masculinity.
That has nothing to do with masculinity.
Yeah, I don't think it does either. So.
Yeah, it's completely. There are tons of things that just are not relevant. Like if we're having a conversation about universal health care, like what does toxic masculinity have anything to do in that conversation?
No.
Yeah. Hi, you just listened to a clip from the Sitch and Adam show. If you like what you heard, you can listen to our live show right here on this channel on Sunday, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you want, you can super chat us. We read $20 and up super chats on the show and then do a follow-up stream on the following Tuesday where we read the rest of the unread super chats and interact with fans of the show. Subscribe to this channel right here to listen to the live show or to listen to more of our awesome clips.